Thank you guys for coming out. Very, very disappointing game for us this week. We jumped out. They jumped out a 28-7 lead. It's exactly what we, as coaching staff, talked about. This team was going to give us their best shot. Finally, our defense settled in, played pretty decent the rest of the way. But, we can't expect Nick Montana to throw it to get us back in the game. We actually took the lead. We made some mistakes down the stretch, and they went away with the victory. Scored a lot of points, but, we got to play better offensive, defensively, and special teams-wise.
If you have questions, please raise your hand so we get a mic to you.
You spent a good portion of last week at this time talking about desperation, how you thought South Alabama was going to be desperate. Do you think, if a loss helps at all, do you think your team kind of learned that lesson as they head into
You know what, I really hope so because, and like I said last week, the most desperate team wins. And, I thought they were more desperate. They came out very, very desperate. In the second half, we were the most desperate team, and we kind of shut them down pretty good. They only got 3 points in the second half off our defense, but it was too late. The lead was probably insurmountable with a young quarterback, not a young, but just a new starting quarterback. So, absolutely. I would hope that, one thing you got to learn when you're in a program, you got to learn desperation comes immediately, especially in college football. You can't lose 1 or 2 games and expect to reach your goals.
Again, the second half, you just said only gave up 3 points. Nick Montana threw maybe a little bit more than you wanted to, but is there some encouragement from the defense and from Nick in that second half performance?
Absolutely. We talked about that a lot. I never wanted to put Nick in a position to do that, and I'm glad that he did do what he did. Now I understand that we can use him more, we can throw the ball more because this whole game plan was run dark war, play action, run a little bit more, play action. But when it got out of hand, he threw it and he threw it well. And I thought the defense was very encouraging. We're gonna settle in on some guys, and it was good in the second half. But in the first half, it was a lot of mental mistakes, that happened to us.
Do you see any similarities with Louisiana Tech? They've got a first-year starting transfer quarterback, just like you do.
Yeah, I think they're guys just like Nick. Good, both are good players, strong arm guys, can throw it around. Their backs, they want to lean on their backs, to run the ball. The offensive line's good. Their defense is pretty good. Their defensive front's playing well. So very, very similar in that aspect of it. They got to have some momentum. They won a game. They beat a good football team, and they'll be a tough team for us.
Your yards per carry was much lower than you probably wanted it to be. Do you come away after looking at the film, was that more on offensive line not getting holes? Was it your backs kind of not finding where they needed to be, or was it more the situation that you were in?
I think it was the situation we were in. We just ran it at that game just to run it because we just didn't want this Nick to just get killed. I mean, I don't know what play can get us back in the game when you're down 28-7 or 31-19. So you got to advance the ball. You got to throw it, a lot. And that, going into the game, that was not the game plan at all to throw it that much, but we had to. And it was uncomfortable, but there was a light at the end of the tunnel. We did complete a lot of balls. We played pretty decent in our passing game. Now we got to run it.
Is Jackson State a more realistic depiction of where you want your game plan to be than what we saw?
I just want to be 50-50 if I can. I really want to run the ball a lot more, but I can't run it when I'm down that much. You win halftime, we're just scrambling on what routes can we run because we're just down.
Coach, 2 questions. How big a setback, considering this game was at home against South Alabama, how big a setback do you think this loss is? And 2, what can you do about the blocked punt?
You know what the setback is? It is what it is. I mean, you lose a game that you probably should win. Going into this game, we felt that we were a good match for them. You lost the game. I think the biggest setback was we got to play better defense early. We didn't come to play early on. If you look at the tape, so yeah, anytime you get a loss, it's a setback. We lose, it'll be another setback. The block punt was huge. The young center, he goes in, he hitches, and then he snaps it. We wasn't even ready. Robert Kelly was still calling out the signals, and he just snapped it. We got to get these little mental errors out of these young kids. We got to be done with them, and we got to mature, and we got to move on. But I think that was the turning point of the game. I thought we had the momentum before that, and I thought our defense had settled down. And I thought we were just going to, get the ball back. We'd take the ball from them again, and we'd go away winning this game.
Coach, in the past, there was a culture of losing here. You're trying to turn that around. You got to win in the first week, but you lost this past week. What have you been telling the guys this week to kind of kind of push down the woe is me, we lost. How do you get them to move on to try to get a win this Thursday?
You got to forget about that one because this game is already here. We getting on a plane tomorrow morning, and we got to go down and we got to win another football game. Win or lose, I mean, we got to have a 24-hour rule where we forget about it. We can't linger on anything. We just got to move on to the next opponent. We'll evaluate this thing at the end of the season, and we'll do whatever we got to do at the end. But right now, we in the middle of the fight, and so it's the next opponent, next man up. We got to just keep moving.
I see Jeremy Peoples is listed as first string this week. What did you see in him, and talk about that a little bit? And then the other thing is Kyle Davis looked like he got injured in the game. What is his status?
He's out. Kyle Davis is definitely out this week. He had a concussion. I don't know how mild or severe. I don't know the grades of the concussion, but he's out. He hadn't been around. He hadn't been at practice. We didn't lock him in the shed or anything. He's just out. He can't stay in light. He's just out. He's just out. But Jeremy Peoples showed that he can get off. Pass rush. I mean, he's a pass rush. Jeremy Peoples is one of the things that we need. We need some edge speed, and I think he's listed as a starter. This team will pose a big problem for us because we need some four-man pressure. They can throw the ball around and they can run it. So I think he'll help us a lot coming off the edge and putting some pressure on the quarterback.
Historically, you guys have never lost to La Tech, but it's been since '98 that you actually played them. Recent years, it's been kind of the reverse. La Tech has been a little bit more successful than Tulane. What do you do to try and combat that going into a hostile environment?
And I don't think you worry about history too much. These kids probably, when last time they played, some of these kids wasn't even playing football. Some of them probably wasn't born. So what you worry about, you just worry about getting your team prepared after a defeat like this. The team that's going to win this game is the team who can handle this Thursday game the best. And I told that to the team. I really think that if we can go up there and we can handle this like business as usual, we can handle this like, hey, we're on the road. We just got to play. It's us against the world. We'll win the game. If they handle it better, they'll beat us.
Julius Wormsley said that when he watched film, the second half, there really wasn't a lot of adjustment that took place. It was really more of a mental shift that happened. How do you make sure that these guys are ready from the moment of opening kickoff and that it doesn't take, a 21-point deficit to kind of get them out of it?
Here's what we've done. We've shook them up a little bit. We've shook the lineup up a little bit. We come out to practice. We start these brisk periods early on at practice now. I mean, we go in. If you saw us today, we're usually quiet on a couple of days before the game. The defense raring to go. We got to create a sense of urgency. We got to create a little bit of defense. I think defense is played with a little bit of panic in your bones. I think a defensive player, you got to come out. You almost got to come out angry. You just want to come out and play fast. I thought defensively we played like an offensive team. We sat back. So Julius is right about the adjustments. We didn't do probably. I didn't see anything that was drawn up. We corrected the mistakes we made. It was a lot of mistakes early on, but after that, those guys settled in and they played well.
Nick threw the ball 47 times Saturday. He said he's never thrown that much in his life, not even JUCO in high school there. I guess he showed, though, that he can do it.
Yeah, he could. And I told the team this, and you can ask those guys, you got to get some guys you're going to talk to. We can't put Nick in that position ever again because what's going to happen is he's going to get hit. He's going to get hurt. You can't throw a ball 47 times, not in this controlled type offense. I got a lot of people on me about, we need to run dark or we need to run dark or we do, but we can't get down 28-7. I don't know if Jim Brown could run the ball at 28-7.
Talk about the chemistry between Montana and Grant. I mean, from week one, it seemed like they had a little bit of miscommunication, but last week they really clicked.
Yeah, we're working on all those things. When you get a new quarterback, an established receiver, the receiver's pretty much used to one thing or one way, and now all of a sudden there's a new quarterback, a new timing, a new system, new ins and outs, new nuances in the passing game. But I think they're working together. They're working after practice every day. You see them out back. Sometimes they're throwing balls together. I like what they're doing. I like what Nick's doing with all those guys. So I expect them to get a lot better.
How close is Edward Williams to being ready to play?
He's playing in this game. He's playing a lot. He's still a little gimpy from that ankle, but we got to play Edward. I think Edward's a good player. He gives us a physical presence. We needed him this week, but he's going to play this week. Any other questions? Thank you.